Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to demonstrate how to use the Arraylist class. Now Arraylist is part of the java.util package and it allows us to store a list of objects. In fact, as far as our programs are concerned, it allows us to store effectively an unlimited number of objects. So previously if we wanted a set of objects, we'd need to create an array. The big problem with arrays is they're a fixed size. So if we declare an array of size 10, that means we can only store 10 objects without having to create a new array to replace it with, to create a bigger array to replace that one, our previous one with. Now, Arraylist hides all that from us. So internally, yes, Arraylist is implemented using arrays, but our programs never see that. It's all managed internally to the class. Our programs can simply use the ArrayList object without having to worry about any of this, and effectively it gives us unlimited storage. So in Eclipse, I've created a new project called TestArraylist and a new class called TestArraylist, which has an empty main method. So the first thing we're going to do is actually create our ArrayList object. So java.util.ArrayList, and we'll call this CityList. Equals new java.util.ArrayList. Okay, we can ignore those warnings just for now. We'll talk about them in a sec. So, we haven't declared any parameters here. Sorry, we've just used the default constructor. That's fine. It'll work just how we need it to. Now, let's add some things to this list. So CityList.add, we have a method called add, which is what we do. So we can add strings to this, London. We can add Denver. We can Paris. Miami, Seoul, oops, accidentally pressed enter there, Tokyo. Now, at this point, the ArrayList contains all of these strings in the order they were added. That's really important. ArrayLists keep track of objects in the order that we put them in, so the ordering does matter. So London is the first element in the list, then Denver, then Paris, then Miami, then Seoul, then Tokyo. So that's great. We've got an ArrayList object that has some stuff in it. What can we do with ArrayList? Well, suppose we want to know how many elements are actually in the list. There's a method just for doing that. So what we're going to do is print that out right now. List size, question mark. Now, the method that we actually do this with is called size. So CityList.size will tell you how many items are currently in the list. Now, what if we want to search through the list to find whether something is in it? Now, if we were going to do this using raw arrays, we might need to write a for loop that looks for it. Now, ArrayList does all this for us. So we can do something like this. Is Miami in the list? And what we'll append here is CityList.contains. So the contains method will tell you whether an object is in the list. Now this uses the equals method of the object, so that will work just fine. So, what else can we do? Suppose we want to find out whereabouts in the list an object is. So, what we want to find the index of a particular object. So, we can do something like this. The location of Denver in the list. CityList.index of Denver. That'll tell you the index into the list where Denver is. So that's all well and good. What if we want to find out whether the list is empty? We know it's not, but what if we wanted to find out that? Well, system.out.println is the list empty? There's a method just for doing this called isEmpty. So citylist.isEmpty. So far, ArrayList looks really easy to use, and it is. ArrayLists are very, very useful when we're writing programs. It avoids us having to deal with arrays. Arrays are still really important, but sometimes an ArrayList is just better for you to use because it gives us more functionality. Now, suppose we want to add an item into the list at a specific location. Well, we can do this. The add method is overloaded. So citylist.add. We can have an index here. So say we want to add a city at 2. What that's going to do is at index 2, this city is going to be inserted and all the other ones after it will be pushed along. Now, what if we want to remove an item from the list? Removing items, if we're dealing with arrays, can be quite a problem because we'd have to shift everything over so there's not a blank space in the array. Now, ArrayList will handle all of that for us. So we can do something like this. Citylist.remove Miami. And then at this point, Miami's just gone. If we don't want... Oops, I should close my string. We can also do things like removing at a specific index. So citylist.remove at, I don't know, 1. Now, at this point, we should probably stop and think about what our array actually contains. So if we have here, sorry, what our list contains. The list will contain London, Denver, Paris, Miami, Seoul. So at this point in time, that is what our list contains, because it's after we've added all these objects. Now, at this point in time, we've added another city at index 2. So this is 0, 1. So that's what our array list looks like here. Now, at this point, we've removed Miami. So Miami is just gone. Remember, no blank spaces. And at this point, we've removed the index at 1. So we've removed Denver. So that's what our list contains at each of these points. Now, ArrayList also contains a toString method to print out the contents of the list. So we can use this just to prove that I'm right. So that'll print out all the elements in the list. Now, what else can we do? Suppose we want to print out the contents of the list in reverse order. So for this, we're going to need a for loop. We can do this ourselves. So for int I equals citylist.size -1, I is greater than or equal to 0, I minus system.out.println. Oops, actually we'll just use a print. Citylist.get at I. So get allows us to get an item at a specific index plus space. That'll work. We'll have a blank line here. Okay, so missed that. Now, the cool thing about ArrayList is we can store any type of object. We don't necessarily have to store strings, which is what we're doing here. So to demonstrate this, what we might do is pull in some classes from a couple of videos ago. Now, to do this in Eclipse, we need to change the build path. So I still have this open, geometric classes. So what I'm going to do here is go right-click on the project, go build path, configure build path, and add geometric classes project to this project. Now, effectively what that's doing is allowing us to use any of these classes in geometric in this project in our current project, so it's really useful. Now, if you're not using Eclipse and you've just got all your classes in the same folder, then you don't need to do this. This is just because I'm using Eclipse. So, what we can do here is create a new new array list. So java.util.arraylist list equals new java.util.arraylist. And we can add circles to this. What is that? It's just Eclipse. We can add circles to this. So list.add new circle 4 with a radius of 2 and another one with a radius of 4. So what we can do here, now the problem is that ArrayList stores objects, as in the base class object. So if we want to use any of Circle 4's methods, then we need to typecast it. So what I mean by this is system.out.println the area of the circle. So we need to do some typecasting here. So circle 4 list.get at 0 get area. So once we've done the typecast, once we've done the typecast, we can access all of Circle 4's methods. Whereas if we didn't do that, all we'd get here when we return this is an object, which means we couldn't access this. So the typecasting is important when we're using an array list like this. So with that, why don't we test this and see what happens? Run as Java application. The list size was 6 because we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll bring this back. Miami was in the list, so contains method works. Is the location of Denver in the list was index 1, so 0, 1, yep. The list is not empty. Well, we know that because it contains 6 objects. Now, this was our Tostring method that printed out the contents of the list after we've done the removals. And then now the important thing is that ArrayList by default, when we print the Tostring method, it encloses this in square brackets. When we reverse the order of the list, we didn't do that, so we just got Tokyo, Seoul, Paris, Zan, and London. And then the area of the circle at index 0 in our new list was 12.56. So really, that's the basics of how we can use array lists in our programs. They're really, really useful. So in this video, we demonstrated how to use an array list. Array list stores a list of objects, and effectively, it's unlimited number of objects until our PC runs out of memory. Now, internally, data is stored inside an array, but that array is managed by the Arraylist class itself, and we never have to worry about it. So with that, that's it for this video. Thanks a lot.